We're about to dive into something that might sting, but you need to hear this. Because if you're wondering why people walk all over you, why they dismiss your ideas, why your worth seems invisible in a room full of others, you're not cursed. You're not unlucky. You're actually complicit in your own devaluation. And the truth is, until you stop belittling yourself, people will treat you like trash. That's not just a metaphor, it's a psychological law. And Alfred Adler, one of the most profound minds in psychology, saw this clearly over a century ago. Yet most of the world still hasn't caught up.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Imagine you're born into a world where every word, every glance, every silence teaches you who you are. You absorb it like a sponge. The way your parents spoke to you, the tone they used when you failed, the praise they withheld when you succeeded, these were not just moments. These were blueprints. They told you, again and again, this is how much you're worth. As a child, you didn't have the tools to question it. So you believed it. And then something terrifying happened. You started repeating it to yourself. You began to narrate your life through the lens of inadequacy. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't deserve better. These weren't just thoughts. They became mantras. And with every repetition, you carved your identity deeper into that story. But here's the twist. People don't treat you based solely on who you are. They treat you based on who you think you are. Because humans are mirrors. When you shrink yourself, others reflect that. When you whisper, life whispers back. When you undervalue your soul, the world discounts your existence. Now pause, really pause, and ask yourself this. Who benefits from your self-belittlement? No one. Not society. Not your loved ones. Not your future. And certainly not you. Adler believed that all human beings strive for significance. But here's where it gets dark. When we feel inferior, we don't stop striving, we just strive in distorted ways. Some people chase superiority through arrogance. Others, like many of us, chase invisibility. We try to avoid failure by never risking value. We think if we stay small, we won't get hurt. But instead, we become easy to ignore. Have you ever noticed how some people command respect without even speaking? They walk into a room and the air shifts. That's not magic. That's self-perception. They've decided deeply, unshakably, that they are worthy. And because of that, the world treats them accordingly. But most of us, we're waiting for the world to validate us first. We think, once I get that job, or once someone loves me, then I'll feel worthy. But Adler flipped this equation on its head. He said, you must first believe in your own worth. Only then will the world respond in kind. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because it means the change has to start with you. You have to stop the inner violence. You have to stop speaking to yourself like a bully. You have to stop apologizing for your existence. You have to stop acting like you're a burden, because the way you treat yourself teaches others how to treat you. If you constantly make jokes at your own expense, people will laugh, but not in a way that empowers you. If you always say sorry when you've done nothing wrong, people will believe you are wrong. If you shrink in conversations, people will overlook you. Not because they're cruel, but because you've signaled that you're not worth seeing. Let me ask you something brutally honest. When was the last time you stood up for yourself, not in anger, not in fear, but in calm, grounded self-respect? When was the last time you said, "I deserve better," and meant it? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and saw someone worthy of admiration, not perfection, but worthiness? Because if you can't find a recent moment, then you are overdue for an awakening. Adler called this the inferiority complex. But here's what most people miss. It's not just about feeling less than others. It's about creating a whole identity around that feeling. It becomes who you think you are. And the more you identify with it, the more you sabotage your life. You don't go for the job because you assume you'll fail. You don't speak up in meetings because you assume you have nothing valuable to say. You stay in toxic relationships because you believe that's all you're worth. And every time you do that, you reinforce the prison you're trying to escape. But there's another way, and it begins with reclaiming your power, not from the world, not from other people, but from your own mind. You have to learn to disagree with your inner critic. That voice that says you're not enough. It's not a prophet. It's a parrot. It's repeating what others once told you, not what's true. Your job is not to obey it. Your job is to challenge it. To say, maybe you're wrong. Maybe I am enough. Maybe I've always been. This isn't some fluffy affirmation game. This is war. A quiet war. A daily battle between the self you've been conditioned to be and the self you were born to become. And you win it not by shouting, but by showing up differently. By sitting at the table when you want to hide. By asking for what you need when you've been taught to settle. By saying no when your past says to please. Every small act of self-respect is a rebellion. And every act of rebellion breaks the pattern. You might be wondering, but what if people still treat me badly, even after I change? That's a fair question. And here's the tough answer. Some will. But now, you'll see it clearly. You won't internalize it. You won't make it about your worth. You'll recognize that their treatment of you says more about them than it does about you. And more importantly, you'll stop tolerating it. Because when you stop belittling yourself, you naturally stop accepting belittlement from others. Your standards rise. Your boundaries strengthen. Your energy becomes a filter, repelling those who can't meet you where you are. Let's go even deeper. Adler believed that the root of most neuroses is not trauma itself, but the meaning we assign to it. So if you were told you were worthless as a child, and you still believe it, the problem isn't the past, it's your interpretation of it. You can't change what happened, but you can change the story. You can say, that wasn't about me. That was about them. You can say, I survived that, and that makes me powerful. You can say, maybe I was never the problem. And when you do, you begin to break the cycle. But this requires radical honesty. You have to be willing to see how you've been complicit in your own suffering, not out of blame, but out of power. Because if you created this identity, you can uncreate it. You can rewrite the script. You can become someone who walks into a room and expects respect not because they demand it, but because it's their natural state. Because they no longer tolerate anything less. So here's a question that could change everything. What would your life look like if you treated yourself the way you want others to treat you? Really think about that. What would change? How would you speak? How would you carry yourself? Who would you allow into your life, and who would you finally let go of? Because that vision, that's not a fantasy. That's a blueprint. And it's yours to build, but you have to start now, not tomorrow. Not when you feel more confident. Confidence doesn't come first. Action does. You act like someone who matters, and confidence follows. You speak like someone who matters, and people listen. You live like someone who matters, and the world responds. Because at the deepest level, people don't treat you based on your resume, your looks, or your achievements. They treat you based on the energy you bring. And if your energy is, "I don't matter," then guess what? The world won't argue. It'll agree. But if your energy is, "I am worthy, I am valuable, I am no longer playing small," then the world will have no choice but to rise to meet you. Now that we've pulled the veil back, you might feel a strange mixture of fear and clarity. That's natural. When you realize you've played a role in your own mistreatment, it can be either devastating or liberating, or both. But this isn't about blame. It's about responsibility. Because once you take ownership of how you've allowed others to treat you, you also take control over how things can be different. Let's go deeper into Adler's philosophy. He argued that every human being is born with feelings of inferiority. It's part of the human condition. But what separates the empowered from the oppressed is how we respond to those feelings. Some use them as fuel to grow, to connect, to contribute. Others collapse inward, constructing a shell to protect what they believe is a broken core. And the danger of that shell is it keeps the world out, but it also keeps you in. You start to believe that your isolation is protection, but in reality, it's a prison. The story you tell yourself is everything. If you walk through life with the narrative, "I'm not enough," then every interaction, every experience, every relationship is filtered through that belief. You'll assume rejection before it happens. You'll anticipate failure before you try. You'll interpret neutrality as dislike and kindness as suspicion. That's not life treating you poorly, that's your lens distorting what's in front of you. But here's the good news. Lenses can be changed, and stories can be rewritten. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is this: stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Who taught me to see myself this way?" Because that question opens a door. It forces you to look beyond your own shame and into the systems, people, and experiences that planted the seeds of your self-belittlement. Maybe it was a parent who was too broken to love you properly. Maybe it was a teacher who humiliated you. Maybe it was a culture that made you feel invisible. But once you identify the source, you can challenge the message. And here's a radical idea. Maybe there was never anything wrong with you. Maybe you were simply in environments that couldn't hold your worth. Maybe you were surrounded by people who were too afraid of their own inadequacy to recognize your brilliance. Maybe your silence was never shyness, it was wisdom waiting for the right moment. But none of that matters unless you believe it. Because you can't control how others see you, but you can control how you see yourself. And that changes everything. Adler believed that all psychological healing begins with social connection. But how can you connect with others if you're disconnected from yourself? How can you expect love if you've never given it to yourself? How can you lead if you don't believe your voice matters? This isn't just about self-esteem. It's about existential courage. The courage to say, I matter, even if no one claps. I matter, even if no one stays. I matter, even if I've made mistakes. Because that kind of self-belief is unshakable. It can't be taken. It can only be forgotten. And your job now is to remember. Let's talk about the mechanics of how people treat you. It's not just about your words. It's about your posture, your tone, your presence. If you walk into a room with your head down, voice low, eyes avoiding contact, you're not just being shy, you're signaling submission. You're telling the room, I'm not a threat. I'm not worthy of attention. Don't look at me. And the room listens. But if you walk in with quiet confidence, shoulders back, eyes forward, not arrogance but ownership, the room listens differently because you've changed the signal. Now, I'm not saying confidence is a performance. I'm saying it's a practice, a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows through repetition. Every time you speak up when you want to stay silent, that's a rep. Every time you set a boundary when it feels terrifying, that's a rep. Every time you choose rest over self-punishment, that's a rep. And slowly, day by day, you start to believe the truth. You are not trash. You are not small. You are not invisible. You just forgot. And now you're remembering. It's also important to understand how your beliefs shape your relationships. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll attract people who confirm that belief. You'll tolerate disrespect. You'll rationalize abuse. You'll call it love when it's really survival. And worse, you'll push away the people who actually see your worth because their love feels foreign. It doesn't match your inner narrative. So you sabotage it. You say, they're too good for me, or they'll leave eventually. And then you make it true. Not because you want to be hurt, but because you want to be right. That's the power of belief. It will bend your reality to match its shape, even if it hurts you. So here's a question to sit with. Are you more committed to being safe or being free? Because safety often means staying small. It means not rocking the boat, not offending anyone, not asking for what you deserve. But freedom? Freedom means risk. It means walking into rooms where you don't feel ready but going anyway. It means saying, I deserve better, even when your voice shakes. It means leaving behind the comfort of your old identity and stepping into the unknown of who you could be. Let's not sugarcoat this, it's hard. You will lose people. You will outgrow environments. You will feel lonely at times, because when you stop belittling yourself, the people who benefited from your smallness will resist. They'll call you selfish, arrogant, difficult, but that's not truth. That's manipulation. That's their discomfort speaking, because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your self-worth threatens their control, and your boundaries force them to confront their own behavior. But that's not your burden to carry. Your only job is to protect your peace. Think about this. What if your biggest limitation is not your talent, not your looks, not your background, but your self-image? What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the belief that you don't deserve it? That's not just tragic, it's fixable. You can change that belief, not overnight, but over time, through action. through new experiences, through surrounding yourself with people who reflect your worth back to you, through therapy, through journaling, through self-compassion. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. Adler wasn't just giving advice, he was issuing a wake-up call. He was saying, the world will only treat you as well as you treat yourself. That's not just a theory. That's a mirror. And it means that every time you accept less than you deserve, you reinforce the belief that you don't deserve more. But the opposite is also true. Every time you demand respect not with anger, but with certainty, you rewire your brain. Every time you say no to what diminishes you and yes to what uplifts you, you change your life. So ask yourself right now, what's one way you've been belittling yourself today? Is it the way you spoke to yourself in the mirror? The way you apologized for something that wasn't your fault? The way you stayed silent when you had something important to say? Identify it. Name it. And then ask, what would the opposite look like? What would it look like to act from self-respect, not self-doubt? That's your next step, not 10 steps ahead, just the next one. Because this isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. It's about looking at your life and saying no more. No more playing small. No more being the joke in your own story. No more waiting for the world to validate what you haven't even dared to believe yourself. You are not trash. You never were. You've just been taught to think that way. And now, it's time to unlearn. Now we reach the part of the journey where everything must shift. The inner confrontation is no longer optional. It's the only path forward. Because if you keep waiting for someone else to give you permission to matter, you'll spend your whole life begging at doors that were never meant to open for you. The door has always been within. And until you stop belittling yourself, people will treat you like trash, not because they are inherently cruel, but because they are responding to the cues you're sending, even unconsciously. Let's talk about those cues. We often think that respect is earned through grand accomplishments, wealth, fame, genius. But in truth, respect is often about energy. You can feel it when someone respects themselves. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, but undeniable. It's in how they carry themselves, how they speak about their needs without apology, how they say no without guilt, how they don't chase people to stay in their lives. And here's the powerful truth. You can cultivate that energy no matter where you're starting from. Many people confuse humility with self-belittlement. But humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself accurately. It's recognizing your strengths without arrogance and your flaws without shame. But when you constantly downplay your intelligence, your beauty, your worth, you're not being humble, you're betraying yourself. You're reinforcing a false narrative that says, I don't deserve to shine. I don't deserve space. And the more you repeat that story, the more the world believes it. Until one day, you wake up in a life that feels like a reflection of your worst fears. This is why Adler's message matters so deeply, not just for the individual, but for the collective. Because when people start showing up in their full worth, everything changes. Relationships deepen, boundaries strengthen, the communities become healthier. Children grow up watching adults who model self-respect. And society becomes less tolerant of abuse, manipulation, and decay. The revolution doesn't start in the streets. It starts in the mirror. It starts when you look at yourself and say, I am done pretending I don't matter. Let's get practical now. What does it actually mean to stop belittling yourself? It means you stop speaking about yourself with sarcasm that drips with shame. It means you stop accepting friendships that drain you. It means you stop chasing love that's conditional. It means you stop working jobs that dehumanize you, telling yourself it's all you can get. It means you stop shrinking in conversations, stop avoiding eye contact, stop minimizing your dreams so others feel more comfortable. It means you stop apologizing for taking up space physically, emotionally, intellectually. And every time you do this, you rewire your brain. Neuroplasticity is real. Your brain is not fixed. It responds to repetition. So if you've spent years repeating, I'm not enough, then you've built a deep groove in your mind. But grooves can be reshaped. You start by choosing a different thought. Even if it feels fake, I am worthy. I deserve kindness. I am allowed to take up space. You won't believe it at first. That's okay. Belief comes through embodiment, through action, through proof. So live like it's true, and eventually, your mind will catch up. Now, you might be thinking, but what if I really am not enough? That thought is the poison, and it's also the illusion. Because the very fact that you're asking that question shows awareness, shows depth, shows conscience. People who are truly not enough don't wonder about it. They don't reflect. They don't seek growth. They don't watch videos like this. You are not broken. You're unhealed. And healing requires a different lens. One that sees you not as a problem to fix, but a soul to reclaim. Here's something powerful Adler taught. Humans are not driven by past traumas alone, but by future goals, often unconscious ones. So if your unconscious goal is to stay safe, you will sabotage anything that feels like expansion. You'll push away opportunities. You'll stay small, not because you lack potential, but because you fear exposure. You fear being seen. Because being seen means being judged. And being judged reminds you of all the times you were made to feel like nothing. But what if visibility isn't the enemy? What if it's the medicine? You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to be celebrated. Not in an egoic way, but in a soul-deep, essence-based way. But no one can celebrate you if you keep hiding. No one can respect you if you keep dismissing your own voice. No one can love you fully if you keep offering only fragments of yourself. So the real question is, are you willing to risk being seen? Are you willing to stand in your truth, even if your voice shakes, even if your legs tremble? Because on the other side of that risk is freedom. Let's make this even more real. Think of a time when you stood up for yourself. Even just a little. Maybe you said no to something that didn't feel right. Maybe you asked for help. Maybe you told someone how you really felt. How did that feel in your body? Scary? Liberating? Unfamiliar? That's the feeling of expansion. That's the feeling of your true self emerging. And the more you tolerate that discomfort, the more your nervous system adapts. Until one day it's no longer terrifying, it's normal. You also need to realize this. Not everyone is going to like the new you. Some people loved the version of you that was always agreeable, always available, always doubting yourself. They felt powerful around you. They felt superior. So when you start rising, they'll get uncomfortable. They might guilt trip you. They might accuse you of changing. And they'll be right, you are changing, but not into someone else. You're changing back into who you were before the world taught you to hate yourself. You're going to need support. Find people who reflect your growth, not your wounds. Find friends who celebrate your boundaries, not just your sacrifices. Find mentors who remind you of your potential, not your limitations. And if you can't find any right now, become that person for yourself. Be your own witness, your own advocate, your own cheerleader. Because once you do, others will follow. Because energy attracts energy, and self-worth is magnetic. Let's end where we began, with a wake-up call. Until you stop belittling yourself, people will treat you like trash. That's not a curse. That's a mirror. The world is reflecting your inner dialogue back to you. So change the dialogue. Rewrite the script. Stand up straighter. Speak more clearly. Take up more space. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you finally realize you're not less than anyone. You are not here to be invisible. You are not here to be tolerated. You are not here to live a life of silent suffering. You are here to rise, to remember, to reclaim, and to teach others by your example that worthiness is not a reward. It's a birthright, yours, always was, always will be. So now, the choice is yours. Do you keep waiting for the world to see you? Or do you start seeing yourself clearly, fiercely, unapologetically, and let the world catch up? Because when you stop belittling yourself, something magical happens. People stop treating you like trash, and they start treating you like truth.